So you might actually have been tying your football boot laces wrong your entire life. And no, I'm not talking about some cool little finger technique that can quickly tie your laces the normal way. I'm talking about an entirely different lacing technique that will not only make your boots feel a lot different, but will also make them approximately 200,000 times better. What? Okay, maybe that's a bit much, but it will make them better. And in today's video, I'll explain how, and of course teach and show you how to do it, plus also add in a few more other lacing tips to give you a completely custom and frankly, a perfect fit in your boots. My friends, let me introduce the runner's loop, which, as the name suggests, is a lacing technique developed for runners to help them combat a loose fit in the heel, which over the years for them have caused a lot of irritation and a lot of heel blisters. And I think football players can probably relate to that. Now, of course, I'm going to teach you the technique and actually how to do it in a minute, but just to explain why the runner's loop works is that it aims to fixate the top part of the foot and really squeeze it firmly down onto the sole plate and into the heel to prevent as much foot movement inside the boot as possible. And basically the idea is that the more you fixate the top part of the ankle and the heel onto the plate and into the heel of the boot, well, basically you give a more secure feeling of the foot inside the boot. And apart from preventing blisters from happening because of the friction, well, it also induces confidence because you feel as if you become more one with the boot itself. And one of the reasons that you have a more connected feeling inside the boot is because you get better lockdown in the midfoot. Now, the reason for that is that since you have a better fixation of the top part of the ankle here, it also pushes the foot down onto the insole. And that means that it eliminates a little bit of that, movement lengthwise on the boot, essentially leading to you having a more firm, direct connection with the insole and then of course also the outsole. And that means that when you start to basically transfer power as you move and push off from your leg to the insole and to the outsole and into the ground, well, the boot is going to react quicker because there's less movement, so there's less slippage where you don't really transfer power. It's just more direct, and that makes the boot feel more responsive, which is really nice when you play football. But actually there is another benefit to the runner's loop, and that is that if you need to somehow make some adjustments to your lacing to accommodate for your foot shape, that could be if you have a high instep, I have for instance, or you have a really wide foot, meaning that you need a little bit more adjustability in the midfoot. You need a slightly looser lacing. Well, with the runner's loop, you can actually still get a really secure, firm hold of the foot and make the boot feel responsive. And that's because since you fixate the top part of the ankle here, you push it down on the plate and back into the heel, the runner's loop takes care of the largest and most important part of the sensation of lockdown and heel lock-in. And that means that basically this does most of the work, meaning that you can ease a little bit up on the pressure on the laces if you need it. Don't make them too loose and too cozy because it's not magic, but it just allows you to adjust a little bit more than you maybe normally could. Okay, Jay. We get that it works. It's awesome. But how do you do it? Well, let me show you. What I've got here is, of course, the Copa Icon 2. It's laced normally, which is what you want to do. And the first thing you do is to basically take out the lace from the top eyelet, or the lace hole, if you will. You do that on both sides, leaving the top eyelet open, so to speak. Now, when you tie your laces normally, you would take from the second to last eyelet, you would go across the boot, right? But here you actually want to go directly up and use the eyelet on the same side. Basically, as you can see here, if you go from the outside and in, you create this little loop. And once you've done that, you take the end of one lace, going from one side, you go through the opposite loop, and same thing from the other side, you go through the loop. And what happens then when you pull the laces tight in a second is that you can really see that it starts to lock. Wah! Okay? Now obviously, this is too tight. You don't want to do that with your foot inside, but it just goes to show that it really locks nicely around the foot, pushing it down onto the plate and also a little bit back into the heel. So that's on the Copa Icon 2 and basically on any boot that has a U-throat with a floating tongue inside. But what about football boots that don't have the classic U-throat with a floating tongue, that come with a sock collar construction instead? Well, the lacing system is slightly different here because you have these two holes at the end where you basically go into the boot and then the lace pops out again. Now, obviously, that's a little bit tricky because you want to make the loop on the outside. So what you do is that you take the laces out of both those holes on both sides. And once you've done that, now you have two holes to work with. So you take the lace on one side, you go directly up, and you take the hole that's furthest back. You go inside the boot, and now you can see whoop, we have a little loop. You can take the laces out again on the inside. And basically you can see you have your two little loops here. So from the inside, it goes through the loop on the outside, and from the outside, it goes through the loop on the inside. Then you can basically pull, 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 pull. And you can see that it starts to lock immediately on that part of the heel. Really pulls the sock in over your foot and locks it in securely. And it's that simple. That is the runner's loop. And you can do it, in other words, on both boots with a knitted sock and with the classic U-throat floating tongue construction. And honestly, that is everything you need. Like, the runner's loop alone can completely change the way your boots feel. And actually make them go from feeling a little bit loose to make them feel as if they're very connected with your foot. In other words, if you do have a pair of football boots where you like the fit, but they do feel a little bit loose in the midfoot and especially in the heel, well, the runner's loop only takes a minute to do, and it can just give you a much more tuned, locked in and responsive sensation, and again, make it as if your boots actually feel more connected to your foot. So that's all cool, and definitely worth spending those extra 60, 90, whatever seconds on. But the beautiful thing is that there are actually some other lacing variations that you can use with the runner's loop to give you an even more custom fit while still getting the amount of lockdown and heel lock-in that you want. And yes, I'm gonna show them to you, of course. And the first variation that you can do is great if you have a wide midfoot or just a lot of volume on top of your foot. That basically works if you want to relieve the pressure from the laces or just give yourself a little bit more adjustability, a little more space in the midfoot to accommodate for that extra volume. So what you want to do here is basically take your laces all the way out except for the very last bit here. Then you take one side and you go up on the inside where you skip the first eyelet and you go out. Like that, okay? So you see the lace runs on the inside. Then you cross over and you go outside and in, okay? Same thing, then you skip an eyelet, you go up on the inside out, cool, like that. You cross over, outside, in. Now then it looks like that. That leaves us with two eyelets left, which you're obviously just gonna use regularly. So you go across, you go inside out, and then that gives you the opportunity to create the lace loop just like we did with the runner's loop before, like so. Now what you then want to do is take the other lace, you start on the first eyelet, and then you basically do the same thing all the way up. And that gives you a little bit more adjustability in this part of the midfoot while still giving you the ankle lock that you want. So it works for both things. However, it might also be that the runner's loop itself is a little bit too intense for you, and if that happens and you pull it too tightly on top of your foot, you might get what is called extensor tendinitis, which is basically where you get an inflammation of the tendons in your foot. And just like you have the peroneal nerves that run down here that can make your foot numb and very, very painful if they get inflamed and irritated, well, the same thing goes for the tendons up here. So getting tendinitis because you pull your laces too tight is not a very nice thing. So in other words, if the regular runner's loop is actually too intense for you, well, you don't want to do it. What you can do instead is actually undo the runner's loop in the top eyelets and then just go down to the second row of eyelets from the top and just do the runner's loop there instead. And sure, it's not gonna be as responsive or lock your ankle in as effectively, but it still does a pretty good job, and you still get some of that responsiveness, some of that lockdown in the midfoot, and it's definitely better than nothing. So if you kind of want the runner's loop light and you don't want some irritation on the top part of your foot, there we go. Just go down to the second row of eyelets and, well, it's still pretty solid. And like I said before, that's kind of all you need. Seriously, between the normal runner's loop and the wide foot variation and the runner's loop light, if it's a little tight on the top of your foot, it just goes a long way to really transforming the feel of your boots. Obviously, I've taught this to basically every footballer I've met that wanted to listen, and I've only met a few of them that didn't like the feel of the runner's loop. So give it a go and kind of experience how it completely changes the fit and the responsiveness of your boots. Now, of course, if you need new boots to do the runner's loop on, well, you can buy them in the link to Unisport right over there. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet for some weird reason, that is a disaster and you need to write that right away, so go and do that. Like the video if you had a good time, and well, I guess I'll see you later. Signing off. Cheerio.